The air outside the university auditorium buzzed with the chatter of fresh graduates. Kioma adjusted her cap, her eyes scanning the crowd for one familiar face, Chidi. They had been inseparable since their second year, a love story whispered about in the corridors of their faculty. Chidi appeared tall and confident, his graduation gown swaying as he walked toward her. He wrapped his arms around her, planting a kiss on her forehead. "This is it, Kioma," he said softly. "We made it." Kioma smiled, her heart brimming with pride. "We did. Now it's time for the real world." Chidi pulled back slightly, his tone turning serious. "I have big plans for us, Kioma. But first, I need to focus on building something solid. A man needs a foundation before he can build a home." Kioma nodded, understanding but hopeful. "I know, Chidi. Just don't keep me waiting too long." Chidi laughed, his deep voice reassuring. "Once the duplex is finished, you'll be moving in as my wife. Give me 2 years." 2 years turned into three, then four. Each time Kioma asked about the wedding, Chidi had a reason to delay. The duplex was incomplete. His business needed more capital. One evening, sitting in Chidi's sparsely furnished living room, Kioma brought it up again. "Chidi, we've been together for 7 years. How much longer are we waiting?" Chidi sighed, rubbing his temples. "Kioma, I've told you before, a man has to be stable to take care of a family. Do you think I'm building this house for myself?" Her voice wavered. "I've supported you through everything, Chidi. I've waited, sacrificed, but it feels like you're always chasing something else." He stood up, frustrated. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Everyone is looking to me to succeed. Can't you just trust me?" Kyoma's heart sank. She wanted to trust him, but his promises felt like shifting sand. As days turned into months, Kyoma began to feel the weight of her stagnation. Her friends were getting married, building families. Chidi seemed more distant, his focus consumed by the never ending construction of his duplex. Little did she know, her world was about to change in the most unexpected way. Chioma wasn't sure why she agreed to attend the wedding that Saturday. It wasn't that she disliked weddings. She loved the joy, the dancing, the promise of forever whispered in every vow. But lately, weddings had become a painful reminder of everything her own relationship lacked. Her best friend Amaka had insisted, "You need to get out, Kioma. Stop waiting around for Chidi to make up his mind. Leave a little." The hall was packed with guests. A lively high life band played in the background as servers moved swiftly with trays of champagne and small chops. Kioma sat quietly at her table, watching couples swirl on the dance floor. "Mind if I sit here?" She looked up to see a tall man in a sharp navy blue suit. His face was kind, his eyes warm and curious. Sure," she said, shifting slightly. "I'm Chisom." He introduced himself, extending a hand. "You must be one of the bride's friends?" "Kioma," she replied, shaking his hand briefly. "No, I'm here with a friend of the groom." Their conversation started casually, small talk about the wedding, the food, the music. But as the minutes passed, Kioma found herself drawn to Kisom's easy laughter and genuine interest. "So," he said, leaning in slightly, "why do I get the feeling you're not entirely enjoying yourself?" Kioma hesitated. "It's not the wedding, it's just some things on my mind." Chisholm didn't press further, but his presence was comforting. By the end of the evening, he had convinced her to exchange numbers. The next day, her phone buzzed. "Chisholm. Good morning, Kioma. Hope you slept well. Just wanted to check in and see if you'd like to grab lunch sometime." She stared at the message for a moment, unsure. Amaka noticed her hesitation. "Kioma, reply him. You've waited long enough for Chidi. It's okay to meet someone new. Lunch with Chisholm turned into several dinners and late night phone calls. He was everything Chidi wasn't: attentive, decisive, and unafraid to show how much he admired her. One evening, as he dropped her off at home, Chisholm spoke earnestly. Kioma, I don't know what your past relationships have been like, but I want you to know I'm serious about getting to know you. I see someone I could build a future with. Chioma felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, she wondered if her life didn't have to revolve around waiting for Chidi's promises to materialize. Meanwhile, Chidi was oblivious to the changes in Kioma's life. His world revolved around his projects and business ventures, and he barely noticed her growing distance. But fate, as always, had its own plans. It was a bright Saturday morning when Kioma received Chisom's message. Chisom, would you like to join me for a wedding this weekend? It's a friend ceremony and I'd love your company. Kioma hesitated. Attending a wedding with Chisom felt significant, as though their boding connection had shifted to something deeper. Yet curiosity and a quiet excitement pushed her to accept. The venue was grand, adorned with cascading white flowers and golden drapes. Guests arrived in dazzling outfits, their chatter blending with the soft hum of a live jazz band. Chisom, as always, was punctual. He picked Kioma up in a sleek black SUV, dressed impeccably in a tailored agbada. You look stunning, he said when she stepped into the car. Kioma smiled, her cheeks warming under his gaze. Thank you. You clean up well yourself. At the wedding, Chisom seemed to know everyone, moving gracefully between tables and introducing Kioma as a very special friend. She felt out of place at first, but his warmth and attentiveness quickly put her at ease. Midway through the reception, during the couple's first dance, Chisom leaned closer. I didn't bring you here just to enjoy the food and music. Kioma raised an eyebrow. Oh, what then? I wanted you to see a glimpse of what I dream about, he said, his tone soft but deliberate. A life where two people truly build something meaningful together. The sincerity in his words struck Kioma. She turned to him, her heart racing, unsure of how to respond. Later that evening, as Shisom drove her home, he asked, Kioma, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy where you are in life right now? The question caught her off guard. I'm content, she said cautiously. Chisholm glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. Content isn't the same as happy. You deserve joy, Kioma, not just comfort. His words lingered long after she got out of the car. She lay awake that night, replaying the day in her mind. For years she had settled for Chidi's endless promises, but with Chisom she felt seen, valued, and hopeful. Meanwhile, Chidi was beginning to notice the shift. A mutual friend had spotted Kioma at the wedding with Chisom and casually mentioned it to him. Kioma? With another guy? Chidi said, frowning. Yeah, the friend replied. They seemed close. He's some big shot doctor, drives a car that costs more than most people's houses. For the first time, Chidi felt a pang of something he hadn't experienced before. Fair. Chidi couldn't shake the thought of Kioma with someone else. He paced his living room, scrolling through their old messages and pictures. How could she be moving on? She was supposed to wait. Meanwhile, Kioma was navigating unfamiliar emotions. Her growing connection with Chisom had opened her eyes to what she'd been missing. They spent more time together, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. One evening, after a casual dinner, Chisom parked in front of her house. Kioma, he began, his voice calm but purposeful. I don't want to rush you, but I need to know, are you still tied to your past? Kioma hesitated. It's complicated. Chidi and I have history, but she trailed off, unsure how to explain the growing void in her relationship. Chisholm reached for her hand. You deserve someone who makes you a priority, not a convenience. I hope you'll think about that. His words lingered long after he drove away. For the first time, Kioma questioned what she truly wanted. Chidi, however, was not ready to let her go. One evening, he showed up unannounced at her door. Kioma, he began, his tone defensive. I heard you've been seeing someone. She stepped outside, crossing her arms. And if I have, Chidi, you've made me wait for years with nothing but empty promises. It's not empty, he snapped. I'm building a future for us. A future where I'm always waiting? She retorted, her voice breaking. Chidi, I need more than words. I need someone who shows up for me now, not someday. Chidi stared at her, stunned. For the first time, he realized she wasn't the same woman who had waited patiently all those years. Chidi wasn't ready to admit defeat. He began calling Chioma more frequently, trying to win her back with grand gestures, flowers, surprise visits, even promises of an engagement. But Chioma saw through it all. One afternoon, Amaka sat with her, sipping a glass of juice. Kioma, you need to make a choice. Chidi will keep trying to pull you back, but do you really want to keep waiting for him? Kioma sighed. It's not easy to walk away from 7 years, Amaka. No, it's not, Amaka agreed. But think about the next seven. Do you want them to look like the last? Chisom continued to be a steady presence. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, he spoke candidly. I know this isn't easy for you, Kioma, he said, but I need you to know I'm here for you, whatever you decide. Kioma stopped and looked at him. Why do you care so much, Chisom? You barely know me. He smiled softly. Sometimes you meet someone and it just feels right. I don't need years to know you're worth it. Chidi's persistence wore thin. Kioma finally called him, asking to meet at a cafe. Chidi, she said firmly, we need to talk. He leaned back in his chair, wary. What is it? I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice steady. I've waited, I've hoped, and I've given you so much of my life. But I'm done waiting. Chidi's face fell. Kioma, please. I'm almost there. Just give me more time. She shook her head. I've given you enough time. This isn't about your duplex or your business. It's about us. And I can't keep sacrificing myself for a future that might never come. Chidi sat in stunned silence as she stood and walked away, her heart heavy but resolute. Evening at her favorite restaurant. Over dessert, he slid a small velvet box across the table. Kioma, he said, his voice filled with emotion, you've brought so much light into my life. I want to spend the rest of it making you as happy as you've made me. Will you marry me? Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Yes, Kisom, I will. Their wedding was a celebration of love and resilience. Kyoma's friends and family gathered to witness her step into a new chapter, leaving behind years of waiting for a love that had never truly valued her. As they danced that night, Chisholm whispered in her ear, this is just the beginning, Kyoma. Our best days are ahead. She smiled, finally at peace.